It started with a chain and a smug little sign. Access restricted. HOA vehicles only. I came home from hauling feed to find the main entrance to my ranch, the one my grandfather carved into the hillside himself, blocked off with a brand new metal gate. No warning. No heads up. Just a lock, a notice, and a whole lot of nerve from the HOA that had crept in next door 5 years ago. I called the number on the sign, got transferred, and eventually Karen, the HOA president, told me they were limiting unnecessary traffic on their road. Funny thing was, it wasn't their road. It was the developers, and it was for sale. This gate blockage may look like just another petty HOA stunt, but it's not what you think, because after they blocked my gate, I bought their street and tripled their dues. Some folks inherit trust funds. I inherited dirt. Good dirt. The kind that smells like sweat and grass when the sun hits it right after rain. The kind that keeps you honest because you can't fake your way through calving season or irrigation repairs. My family's ranch has been here longer than the pavement, longer than the subdivision, longer than the county office even knew what to call this side of the hill. We've raised cattle, baled hay, and grown up out here for 3 generations. And if you squint hard enough, you can still see the original fencing my grandfather hammered in by hand with cedar posts and rusted wire. We never needed much. Just access to the main road, a working gate, and enough space to breathe. The kind of self-reliance that comes from knowing your land like it's your own heartbeat. I wasn't born with a silver spoon, but I was raised with a crescent wrench in one hand and a branding iron in the other. And for most of my life, that was all I needed. The ranch covers about 200 acres on the outskirts of a town that's been growing a little too fast for its own good. The front gate opens onto a winding stretch of road that used to be little more than gravel. That road was once shared by only a few of us, farmers, ranchers, and one retired machinist with a cabin up near the ridge. We never had problems. You waved when you passed each other, and you kept your nose out of everyone else's business. Then came the homes. A developer came through and carved up the pasture land next to my property into tidy little plots. They called it Silver Hollow Estates, which was a fancy name for 12 beige boxes stacked around a community garden nobody used and a park bench that always faced the wrong way. At first, I didn't care. Let people build their dream homes and fill them with artificial turf and smart thermostats. As long as they kept off my fence and didn't spook the horses, we'd get along just fine. But HOAs don't grow the way weeds do. They're planted. Intentionally. Within a year, Silver Hollow had itself a homeowners association. President, vice president, rules, finis, a newsletter called the Silver Sentinel. I never got a copy, but I didn't need to. I could hear the tone of it every time Karen, the HOA president, marched past my gate on her community wellness walks. She introduced herself early on. Hi there, I'm Karen Wexley, acting chair for Silver Hollow. Just wanted to say we're really excited to have you as our scenic neighbor. I nodded and said, "This is a working ranch, ma'am, not a view." She blinked, laughed politely. Of course. We just love the authenticity." That was the first red flag. I'd seen that look before, the kind that sees your barn as a prop, your dirt road as rustic flavor, and your cows as background noise for their backyard wine tastings. Still, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. For a while, it was tolerable. They kept to their plots. I kept to my business. Sometimes kids wandered too close to the cattle pens, or a drone buzzed overhead during branding season, but nothing worth starting a war over. The problem started when they paved the road. That little stretch of gravel that led up to both my gate and the Silver Hollow entrance was bought and regraded by the developer, still legally private, but maintained under a usage agreement that gave the subdivision priority traffic consideration. It didn't affect me at the time. My easement rights were grandfathered in, protected by a clause in my deed that predated Silver Hollow by decades. The developer knew this, and to their credit, they respected it. I even had it in writing, a signed confirmation that ranch access would be unrestricted and uninterrupted for as long as I owned the land. But the moment the HOA took over street maintenance from the developer, that's when things started to shift. First, they added speed bumps, then reflective signs warning of agricultural vehicle traffic, as if my hay trailer was some unpredictable monster. Then came the letter about limiting access during non-peak hours for safety. I called the HOA office, which turned out to be Karen's converted sunroom, and asked her what she meant by limiting access. "Oh," she said sweetly, "we just think it's best for the community if non-residential vehicles reduce road use after dark. The kids play out there sometimes." I reminded her this wasn't a cul-de-sac. It was a ranch road, and my cattle didn't know how to read curfew signs. She assured me nothing was being enforced. That was a lie. One morning, my fencing supplier called to say his truck was denied entry. Said a woman with a vest and a walkie-talkie stopped him at the turn-in and said he wasn't authorized for delivery. I drove straight down, got out of my truck, and came face-to-face with HOA Karen herself, standing in front of my own gate with her arms crossed like she owned the land under her shoes. "This is a private road," she said. "We voted to restrict access for non-approved traffic." I pointed at the cattle trailer behind me. "This isn't traffic. This is survival." She didn't budge. "You're not part of this community," she said, "and we have to prioritize our family's peace and security." "Isterte her, stunned." Not part of the community? I was here before the street had a name, before the neighborhood had a sign, before her precious HOA rules existed. She saw my ranch as a problem, something to be managed, quieted, or eventually erased. That's when I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a message. Karen had decided the road belonged to the HOA, and I was just a nuisance using it out of habit. She forgot one thing. I had a copy of the developer's parcel records, and I knew something she didn't. The street wasn't owned by the HOA. It wasn't public either. It was still legally part of the developer's unclaimed assets, sitting in a holding company, just waiting for someone to make an offer. So while Karen played power games and blocked my gate, I made a few calls, checked some filings, and bought the damn street. You can always tell when a neighbor's patience is genuine and when it's wearing a smile like a mask. After the HOA officially took over the street, I noticed more glances over fences, more folded arms at property lines, and more subtle frowns when I rolled by in the tractor. At first, it was just tension, the kind that builds up silently like humidity before a thunderstorm. Then came the complaints. Karen sent the first letter. It was printed on official HOA letterhead, complete with a decorative watermark of a silver oak tree. Very proper, very dramatic. Inside, it politely requested that I limit tractor use during community quiet hours, which she defined as 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., and again from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. You know, when ranch work actually happens. She cited disturbance reports, said the engine noise was unnerving to children, and suggested I consider switching to electric equipment. That part actually made me laugh out loud. Nothing says out of touch like suggesting I run a hay rake on batteries. Then came the smell complaints. According to the next newsletter, several residents had voiced concern about the unpleasant aromas drifting from my pasture. Karen said the HOA had initiated a dialogue with nearby landowners to explore odor mitigation strategies. I wasn't in a dialogue. I was in a cattle lot. I ignored both letters. So they escalated. One Thursday morning, I got a call from a grain supplier. Said his driver had been turned away at the main road. Claimed the entrance was residential only now. I grabbed my keys and drove straight down to the property line. That's when I saw it. My ranch gate, the one that had stood open for decades, was now closed and chained shut. A brand new aluminum sign hung from the lock. Private access for resident use only. All unauthorized vehicles will be reported. 2 folding sawhorses stood beside it, and a roll of orange safety tape had been strung up like they were preparing for a county fair or a crime scene. My jaw locked. I stepped out of the truck, took a picture of the setup, and followed the sound of voices coming from down the slope. Sure enough, Karen and 2 HOA board members were huddled by their communal garden boxes, chatting like they hadn't just cut off access to a working ranch. I didn't yell, didn't storm up. I walked, calmly, directly. Karen spotted me and gave a tight, controlled smile. "Good morning," she chirped, like this was just another sunny suburban stroll. "What the hell is this?" I asked, holding up my phone with the gate photo. She blinked, then said in her professional tone, "We had a board vote. Emergency session." It was decided that for safety and traffic control, all non-residential vehicle access would be suspended temporarily. Suspended? I repeated. That gate is my entrance. And that road, she said, tapping her tablet, falls under HOA management now. We've been granted authority over usage policy. You don't own the road. Our charter gives us oversight on all shared thoroughfares. It's a ranch road, I said flatly, and your board doesn't have jurisdiction over my operation. Karen took a breath, folded her arms like she was posing for a corporate brochure, and said, We're just trying to protect the neighborhood. Heavy equipment coming and going, loose livestock, strange trucks, it's disruptive. The residents have rights too. That was the moment it clicked. Karen didn't see my ranch as neighboring property. She saw it as an eyesore, a liability, something she could shrink down and eventually smother under HOA bylaws and community guidelines. She wasn't just trying to block a gate. She was trying to block me. I left without another word. But I didn't go back to the ranch. Not yet. I drove straight to the county office and asked for an updated record of property ownership for the road in question. I already knew the answer, but I wanted it on paper, in bold ink, signed and sealed. And there it was. The road wasn't HOA owned. It wasn't public either. It was still legally the property of the original developer, who, after selling off all the lots and dissolving their construction entity, had left the road parcel number attached to a holding company out of state. It was private, unclaimed, and available. The next day, Karen doubled down. She had new signs posted, bigger ones. Notice to all non-residents. This road is monitored for unauthorized traffic. All deliveries must be approved in advance. She even hired a part-time security guard to sit near the HOA entrance in a golf cart and scribble down license plates. Some poor college kid, sweating in a reflective vest and looking like he regretted every life choice that brought him here. Meanwhile, my fence contractor texted saying he'd been turned away again. And then a neighbor who used to bring my hay bales by the truckload, a guy I'd known for 20 years, told me, I'd love to help, but they threatened to fine me if I drove down your way again. Said I was violating residential speed codes. Speed codes? On a dirt road? That's when I'd had enough. Karen had drawn her line. Now it was time I drew mine. Only mine came with a checkbook and a county record number. Karen had her signs. She had her vote counts and her emergency meetings and her laminated warnings posted with zip ties, like she was running a military checkpoint instead of a cul-de-sac. But I had something else, questions. And I intended to get answers, the kind you don't find in newsletters, but in filings, maps, and quiet paper trails that never lie. The morning after the new signs went up, the ones warning delivery drivers to stay off private roads, I made 2 stops. First, to the county clerk's office. Second, to my lawyer's. At the clerk's desk, I asked a simple question. Can you pull the parcel information for the main road cutting through Silver Hollow and up to my gate? The woman at the desk tapped away for a few seconds and frowned. That's not a public road. I know. It's not HOA owned either. I know that too, I said. Who holds title? She printed the sheet, stamped it, and slid it across the counter. Harbor Valley Development Holdings, LLC, a shell company registered to a now-dissolved firm out of Santa Fe. I grinned. The HOA didn't own the road. They leased access from a developer who no longer existed. It wasn't in the county's maintenance inventory, and no transfer of ownership had ever been recorded. No easement granted. No rights ceded. Just a ghost parcel left behind like a bone the dog forgot to bury. Karen didn't just misunderstand her power. She imagined it. I took the stamped record straight to my attorney, Elaine Mendoza. Sharp, quiet, and built like a legal brick wall in a blazer. She scanned the paperwork while sipping black coffee and raising one eyebrow. They don't own it? She asked. Not even close. Elaine flipped through the parcel record. And this developer's out of business? Dissolved 3 years ago. Their remaining assets were rolled into Harbor Valley Holdings. And nobody's claimed the street? Nope. She leaned back. That's rare. But legal? I asked. She nodded. Very. If the road was never turned over to the HOA, and it's not public, then whoever owns the parcel controls it. Usage. Maintenance. Terms. All of it. What if someone bought it? Elaine smiled. Then they'd own a street full of people who've been pretending it belongs to them. The next week, we got to work. Elaine filed a formal request for contact through the LLC's agent, and we submitted a quiet offer, direct, simple, and fair. We offer market value, plus a maintenance allowance, and outlined that the buyer, me, would honor reasonable residential use by current households. It wasn't a trap. It was leverage. And within 10 days, the deed was signed. The road, from the HOA entrance all the way up to my ranch gate, belonged to me. Just like that. I didn't throw a parade. I didn't post online. I didn't announce it at the town feed store. Instead, I let Elaine draw up a notice of transfer of ownership and updated usage terms, which were then sent via certified mail to each HOA board member, along with scanned proof of purchase, a copy of the title, and a list of newly imposed conditions. The letter was just 2 pages long. The key points were: effective immediately, all non-residential maintenance of the street was under my authority. The HOA may continue to use the road, with the stipulation that dues toward maintenance would now be assessed and collected by me per lot. Due to years of unpermitted modifications and unauthorized road use interference, including gate installation, dues would be increased by a factor of 3, retroactively effective from the date of the first interference. Failure to comply within 30 days would result in revoked access and barricades placed at the road's entry point. I had no intention of cutting them off, not unless they forced my hand, but I wanted them to feel it, feel what it was like to be on the receiving end of a lock. Karen called within hours. I didn't pick up. She called again. This time she left a voicemail. This is wildly inappropriate. You have no right to enforce traffic rules on a private community. I texted her a copy of the deed. No reply. The next HOA board meeting, which I was legally invited to now, as a landowner affecting the community's access, was one for the books. Elaine and I sat quietly in the back while Karen read a prepared statement about surprising developments and unforeseen legal complications. The rest of the board sat in stunned silence. One of them, the treasurer, looked like he might pass out. Another muttered, "He bought the road?" Yes. Yes, I did. Karen tried to regain control, suggesting that the board explore legal remedies and push back on the property claim. Elaine stood and introduced herself. If the HOA would like to dispute the transaction, she said, holding up the signed title and 2 copies of the deed, we welcome you to file suit in district court. However, please be aware that your current usage of the road is a privilege, not a right, and your organization has been acting without any legal authority for over a year. Silence. Utter silence. The next morning, the new signs went up. They looked like mine, because they were. Notice: road under new private ownership. All HOA usage subject to access fees and conduct terms. For inquiries, contact Elaine Mendoza, ESQ. And just beneath that, property access to ranch, fully restored. Do not obstruct. Owner. Karen didn't speak to me for a week. Then she emailed. It was one line: "You'll regret this." I didn't respond, because Karen thought this was a grudge match. But I wasn't playing chess with her. I was paving my own road, and now legally it was theirs too. Only difference? They had to pay to use it. Power, when done right, doesn't need volume. It just needs paperwork. Karen may have had her signs, her votes, her smug meetings, but the moment the ink dried on that deed, the whole game shifted, and I didn't need to say a word. I just needed to send a letter. Every homeowner in Silver Hollow Estates got one. Clean envelope, white paper, black ink. My new letterhead was printed in the top corner. Nothing flashy, just my name, the parcel number, and the words: private easement and road owner. Parcel hashtag 47-188B, Silver Hollow Corridor. The body of the letter was simple and professional. It informed them of the updated ownership of the road, outlined their continued right to use it for normal residential purposes, and, politely but firmly, introduced the new access and maintenance fee structure. Effective immediately, dues would be tripled, assessed annually, and collected by me directly or through a property manager of my choice. There was a breakdown of costs: $600 per household annually, up from $200. Fees covered maintenance, snow removal, drainage upkeep, and legal management. Failure to comply would result in notice, followed by revoked access privileges. No threats, no dramatics, just legally binding authority enforced by a man they try to lock out. Of course, I anticipated backlash. Karen sent out a flaming email blast titled, "Urgent, illegal takeover, do not pay this man." She called the fee ransom, claimed I had tricked the developer, and encouraged the neighborhood to stand strong in unified resistance. But here's the thing. The deed doesn't care how unified you feel. A few homeowners called me directly, trying to sort fact from fiction. I kept it simple. The road you live on was never public. The HOA never owned it. The original developer left it hanging in a holding company, and I bought it. Legally. That makes me the owner. I'm not blocking you. I'm just making sure it's used properly, including by me. Most of them sighed. A couple muttered apologies. One or two tried to haggle. But over 70% paid their dues before the first 30-day deadline. Some grumbled. Some wrote checks with angry little notes in the memo line. But they paid. Karen? She paid last, on day 29, with a certified check and a furious scribble that said, "Under protest." I framed it and hung it in the feed room. Meanwhile, I restored my gate, cut off the rusted chain they'd bolted through my fence posts, swung the hinges back into place, hung a brand new steel sign that read, "Ranch entrance, private drive, do not obstruct. Access permitted by road owner, not HOA." Delivery drivers returned without a single issue. The post office called to confirm the address access was restored, and my fencing contractor sent me a note that simply said, "Glad the road's yours now. Never liked that woman anyway." On my side of the boundary, life returned to normal. But on theirs, that's where the real cracks started to show. It began with the whispers. A resident named Greg, a retired Air Force mechanic who had always been polite when passing me on the road, stopped me one day and said, "She told us the HOA owned the street. Said they filed paperwork years ago." I nodded. They didn't. I pulled the filings. There's no record of ownership transfer. Not a single legal claim on file. Greg looked off toward the HOA sign and muttered, "Figures." Then came the HOA meeting. This time, I didn't attend. Didn't need to. Someone live-streamed it from their phone. And let's just say, the mood had changed. Karen opened with her usual flair, trying to spin the situation as unjust and potentially reversible. But the residents were fed up. "You told us this was our road. Why didn't you check the deed before putting up gates? We're paying him now because you didn't do your homework." One woman asked if they could petition the county to condemn the road and take it over. Elaine, who'd submitted a protection request on my behalf 2 weeks earlier, had already blocked that path. The county had no interest in assuming maintenance for a small private loop surrounded by open land. Karen stuttered, tried to pivot. It didn't work. Within days, signs of her unraveling began to surface. She stopped walking the neighborhood. The weekly email newsletter went quiet. One of the board members, the same guy who'd helped post the first HOA vehicles only sign, resigned without explanation. Then came the HOA refund requests. Turns out, Karen had spent part of the association's emergency budget on those custom metal signs, barricades, and the part-time gate security kid, all for a road she never legally owned. When a treasurer revealed this in a written summary, residents demanded clarity. Karen gave none. The calls for her resignation were slow at first, but steady. And then, like most bad ideas, her presidency just collapsed under its own weight. No dramatic speech. No final warning. She just stopped showing up. Meanwhile, I kept it professional. No gloating. No bragging. But I did take a walk up the road one morning with a cup of coffee and a screwdriver. Removed one of their leftover private community access only signs that still hung half-tilted on a post near the entrance. Took it home. Used it as a tray for oil changes. Felt fitting. I also posted a new notice at the top of the road. Road under private ownership. Residents may continue usage under compliance. Ranch access fully restored. And beneath that, abuse it again, and the road goes to gravel. No one questioned it. Not anymore. In the end, Karen didn't leave with fireworks. She didn't slam the door or post a public manifesto. She just stopped answering calls. One day, her name quietly disappeared from the HOA board roster. No farewell email. No final speech. Just an awkward silence and a note at the bottom of the next newsletter. Interim leadership will be assigned pending election. Word around the neighborhood was that several homeowners had gathered signatures to vote her out. Not because of me personally, but because of what her arrogance cost them. Not just the tripled road dues, not just the gate embarrassment, but the realization that they were following someone who didn't know where her power stopped. Once Karen was out, the rest of the board changed their tune. First, the new president, a younger guy named Mitch, reached out via email. Short, respectful, and to the point. We acknowledge the road is under your ownership. We'd like to formally request continued access under your posted terms and explore a new maintenance agreement that works for both parties. The mit for Kofi. No lawyers. Just two men who'd rather fix fences than build new ones. He apologized, not just for the road, but for the way things had gotten so personal. I told him it was water under the bridge, so long as they left the ranch alone. He nodded, shook my hand, and said, "You won't have any more trouble from us." And that was that. From that point on, peace returned, not just to the road, but to the boundary. The deliveries rolled in uninterrupted. The gate stayed unlocked, swinging free on oiled hinges. My ranch hands came and went without anyone monitoring traffic or threatening to fine them for soil dust. Even the neighborhood dogs stopped barking when my tractor passed. Respect had been restored, and it wasn't loud or flashy. It was the quiet kind, the kind that settles into a community when the people who used to stare over fences start waving instead. Funny thing is, I even got invited to the HOA barbecue a few months later. Didn't go, but I appreciated the invite. Now and then, I still see Karen's old house. New couple lives there now. Friendly folks keep to themselves, never try to post any rules on my side of the line. They wave when I drive by. Sometimes their kids wave too. I wave back. The land's quieter now, and stronger for what it went through. My ranch is undisturbed. The road is mine. And the next time someone decides they want to manage me out of my own property, they'll have to deal with more than a fence and a threat. They'll have to read the fine print. Because around here, we don't yell about boundaries. We buy them. If your HOA ever thinks blocking your gate is a smart move, just smile. And remember, the street goes both ways, especially when you own it. They thought locking me out would put me in my place. They thought a sign, a chain, and a little peer pressure would wear me down. What they didn't realize is some of us don't respond to noise. We respond to paperwork, land deeds, and signatures in blue ink. They tried to fence me in, so I bought the fence line. They tried to block the road, so I bought the road too. Power doesn't always look like shouting. Sometimes it looks like a quiet man with a county map and the right lawyer. And sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all, it's ownership. Legal, final, undeniable. So if you ever find yourself facing down an HOA with too many rules and not enough sense, just remember, you don't have to fight fire with fire. Sometimes, all it takes is buying the land beneath their feet and handing them the bill. Because out here, we don't just protect what's ours. We own what they thought they controlled, and we make sure they never forget it.